Jack studied Steve, his expression unchanging. The manager's words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The young salesman, Jeremy, glanced between the two men, his unease palpable. Disruptive, Jack echoed, his voice carrying a quiet authority. He took a slow step forward, closing the gap between them. You mean to tell me that my appearance, or perhaps my hat, doesn't align with your dealership's values? Steve hesitated, the faintest flicker of doubt crossing his face. It's not personal, he said carefully, but his tone betrayed him. We simply have standards to uphold. Jack gave a faint chuckle, low and measured. Standards, he repeated. He reached into his back pocket, pulling out a leather wallet. From it, he produced a business card and held it out to Steve. Steve took it, his brow furrowing as he read the embossed lettering. Jack Reynolds, CEO, Sun Valley Motors. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came out. Let me clarify something, Jack said, his tone still calm but now laced with unmistakable authority. I came here today to see firsthand how this dealership treats its customers, all of its customers. What you've shown me so far is enlightening, to say the least. Steve stammered, his composure crumbling. Mr. Reynolds, I didn't realize. That's evident, Jack interrupted, his gaze unwavering. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call a meeting with your team, and we're going to have a very honest conversation about what it means to represent this company. Because this... He gestured around the pristine showroom. This isn't it. Steve nodded hastily, his confidence shattered. Jack turned to Jeremy, offering a small nod. You handled yourself well. Keep it up. With that, Jack adjusted his hat, turned on his heel, and walked out of the dealership. The sound of his boots on the polished floor echoed through the now silent showroom. Outside, the Arizona sun blazed down as he climbed back into his truck, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes, he thought, leadership wasn't about grand gestures. It was about ensuring that every part of the business reflected the values you stood for, and making sure those values weren't just lip service. Jeremy's face fell, but he nodded reluctantly, retreating to his desk. The tension in the room thickened as the rest of the staff avoided looking directly at Steve. Meanwhile, Jack sipped his coffee, his gaze fixed on the dealership. He watched Steve's interaction with Jeremy, the young salesman's defeated posture speaking volumes. Jack's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, a message from his assistant, Marcy. Marcy, want me to look into the Scottsdale branch? Heard anything interesting? Jack smirked faintly. He typed back quickly, Hold off for now, I'm handling it. As the minutes passed, Jack observed customers coming and going. Steve's demeanor didn't waver, polished and professional on the surface, but carrying an air of condescension that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't long before Jack decided he had seen enough. He finished his coffee, stood, and walked back to his truck. From the glove compartment, he pulled out a sleek tablet and tapped a few times, bringing up the dealership's records and performance reviews. He frowned as he scrolled, noting patterns he hadn't caught before. Time to make some changes, he muttered. Jack dialed a number. On the second ring, Marcy picked up. Marcy, schedule a meeting with the Scottsdale dealership team first thing tomorrow. Full attendance mandatory. Understood, Mr. Reynolds. Anything specific you'd like on the agenda? Jack paused, his eyes narrowing as he watched Steve from a distance through the glass windows. Respect, professionalism, and a reminder of who we are as a company. The next morning, the Scottsdale team gathered in the sleek conference room, the atmosphere charged with curiosity and unease. Steve sat at the head of the table, clearly uncomfortable. Jeremy and the other staff exchanged wary glances. When Jack walked in, the room went silent. Gone was the casual observer from the previous day. This was Jack Reynolds, the CEO, and his presence commanded attention. Good morning, Jack began, his tone calm but authoritative. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit this dealership as an average customer. What I experienced was revealing. Steve shifted in his chair, his usual confidence faltering. Jack paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. let me make one thing clear. Sun Valley Motors stands for excellence, not just in the cars we sell, but in the way we treat people. That means everyone who walks through those doors. He stopped, his gaze sweeping the room. What I witnessed yesterday, dismissiveness, arrogance, and a clear lack of respect for differing perspectives, is unacceptable. It doesn't align with our values or our vision as a company. Steve opened his mouth to speak, but Jack raised a hand, silencing him. Steve, you said this dealership caters to a progressive and inclusive clientele. But true inclusivity doesn't mean picking and choosing who deserves respect. It means treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their background or beliefs. The room was silent. Even Steve seemed unable to meet Jack's eyes. Turning to Jeremy, Jack said, "You showed professionalism yesterday, even under pressure. That's the kind of attitude I expect from every employee here. Thank you for that." Jeremy's cheeks flushed, and he nodded, clearly surprised by the acknowledgement. Jack's tone hardened as he addressed the group again. "Changes are coming, starting with leadership training for everyone in this room. And Steve, your future here is under review. Consider this your wake-up call." Steve paled, nodding stiffly. Jack straightened, his voice softening slightly. "This isn't just about one incident. It's about ensuring that every part of this company reflects the values we claim to uphold. From now on, we do better. Understood?" A chorus of subdued, "Yes, sir," followed. Jack nodded. "Good. Now let's get to work." As the meeting adjourned, his staff left the room with a mix of relief and resolve. Jeremy lingered for a moment, catching Jack's eye. "Thank you, sir," he said quietly. Jack smiled faintly. "Just keep doing your job, Jeremy. And remember, real leadership starts with how you treat people." With that, Jack walked out, leaving a room full of people determined to live up to his expectations. "Good morning, Karen," Jack began, his tone calm but firm. "Yes, I had the opportunity to visit the Scottsdale dealership yesterday unannounced. What I saw raised some serious concerns." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "I see," Karen said, her professionalism unshaken. "Could you elaborate on those concerns?" Jack wasted no time. "It starts with the culture. I observed a manager, Steve Harrison, displaying a clear lack of respect for certain customers and employees. There's a visible tension among the staff and their interactions with clients, while courteous on the surface, feel insincere and calculated. It's a culture that prioritizes image over integrity, and that's not who we are as a company." Karen responded carefully. "That's troubling to hear. Steve has been with the company for a while and has consistently met performance metrics. However, if there are deeper issues with his leadership style, we need to address them." Jack nodded, though she couldn't see him. "Metrics only tell part of the story, Karen. A dealership's success isn't just about numbers. It's about trust, relationships, and the values we uphold. Steve's approach to leadership is eroding all three." Karen's tone softened. "Understood. What steps do you propose?" Jack leaned forward, his voice carrying weight. "First, we're conducting a full cultural audit of the Scottsdale branch. I want anonymous feedback from every employee about the work environment and management. Second, Steve will be placed under review. Depending on the findings, he'll either undergo intensive leadership training or be replaced." Karen hesitated for a moment before replying. "That's fair, and I'll oversee." Jack's voice carried a quiet intensity as he replied, "Steve, that's where you're wrong. Yesterday wasn't an exception. It was a symptom of a problem that runs deeper than one bad interaction or one bad day. Do you understand what that means?" Steve nodded, though his face betrayed uncertainty. I think so, sir," he stammered. Jack leaned back in his chair, his gaze unyielding. "Let me make it clear. What I witnessed wasn't just about customer service or a lack of professionalism. It was about respect. Respect for our customers, for our values, and for this company. And from what I've seen, it's been missing for far too long here." Steve shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. "I take full responsibility, sir," he began, but Jack held up a hand to stop him. "Responsibility is about more than words, Steve. It's about action, and right now, actions speak louder than anything you could say." Jack's voice softened, but the weight of his words remained. This isn't about punishing you or anyone else. It's about fixing what's broken. And that starts now. Steve nodded slowly, a mixture of shame and resolve in his expression. What do you need me to do? He asked quietly. Jack stood, towering over the desk as he spoke. First, we're going to address this team. Together. They need to hear the truth, not just from me, but from you. Then, we're going to put a plan in place to ensure this never happens again. Steve swallowed hard, but nodded. Understood, sir. Jack extended his hand, a rare gesture that carried both expectation and encouragement. Good, because this isn't just about one dealership, it's about what Sun Valley Motors stands for. Let's make sure we don't forget that. Steve shook his hand, the gravity of the moment sinking in. Together, they stepped out of the office, ready to face the team and begin the work of rebuilding trust and integrity, starting from the ground up. That went beyond the business. This was more than just protecting the reputation of Sun Valley Motors. It was about creating a culture where every customer, every employee, and every interaction mattered. Jack climbed into his truck, but before starting the engine, he sat for a moment, taking in the scene. Through the dealership windows, he could see the staff exchanging hushed conversations. He noticed Jeremy stepping forward, speaking earnestly to Karen, who had just arrived. It was clear that the events of the day had already started to make an impact. As he pulled out of the lot, Jack's mind was already turning to the next steps. This wasn't just about fixing one dealership. It was about ensuring the values of respect and integrity rippled across the entire company. He'd be watching closely, but more importantly, he trusted that the people within the organization, people like Jeremy and Karen, would rise to the challenge. Driving away, Jack felt something rare: satisfaction. Change wasn't easy, but sometimes the hardest conversations were the most necessary. Today wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something better. And that, he knew, was worth every moment of discomfort and confrontation. Jack returned the handshake, his own smile reflecting satisfaction. "Good to see you too, Jeremy," he replied. His eyes scanned the showroom, noting the brighter energy and renewed sense of purpose in the staff. "The place feels different. How are things?" Jeremy nodded. "Better. A lot better. We've been working hard and it's paying off. Customers are noticing too. Sales are up and the reviews have been positive. But more importantly, the team feels like a team again." Jack's expression softened with pride. "That's what I like to hear. You've done well, Jeremy. Karen tells me you've stepped into leadership naturally." Jeremy hesitated for a moment, then said, "I've just been trying to follow your example, holding myself and others accountable, focusing on respect and collaboration. It's not always easy, but it's worth it." Jack clapped him on the shoulder. "That's exactly the mindset we need. Leadership isn't about perfection, it's about persistence and integrity." As Jack toured the dealership, he saw the changes firsthand. The staff interacted with customers with genuine warmth, and the teamwork was palpable. Karen, who had joined him for the visit, pointed out subtle but impactful adjustments they'd made to the workflow and customer experience. When they reconvened in the office, Karen summarized, "Sun Valley Motors is becoming the model dealership for the company. The transformation here is proof of what's possible when we commit to our values." Jack leaned back in his chair, a rare moment of relaxation crossing his face. "It's a start," he said. "But it's also a reminder. This work never ends. Cultures can't just be built. They have to be maintained day in and day out." Karen nodded. "And with leaders like Jeremy, I think we've got a good shot." As Jack prepared to leave, Jeremy walked him to his truck. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds," Jeremy said sincerely, "for stepping in when you did and for believing things could change." Jack smiled, tipping his hat slightly. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for stepping up and proving they could." With that, he drove away, confident that the seeds of change he'd planted were flourishing, and that Sun Valley Motors was no longer just another dealership, but a symbol of what the company could achieve when respect, accountability, and leadership aligned. It's the people who make the difference, and when we honor them, we honor the very foundation of our success. Jack's story became a cornerstone of Sun Valley Motors' company culture. His actions, though quiet and unassuming, resonated far beyond the walls of the Scottsdale dealership. They inspired a movement within the company and the wider industry, a reminder that leadership isn't about titles or power, but about responsibility and the impact of doing what's right. The lessons learned at Sun Valley Motors were immortalized not just in corporate policies, but in the attitudes and actions of those who worked there. Jeremy's mentorship shaped a new generation of employees, and Karen's leadership ensured the dealership remained a beacon of integrity. Even Steve's journey of redemption served as a reminder that change, while difficult, was always possible. For Jack, the experience reaffirmed his belief in the power of values-driven leadership. As he visited dealerships across the country, he carried with him the same resolve that had driven him to confront the issues in Scottsdale. Each visit was an opportunity to listen, to learn, and to remind everyone, whether customer or employee, that they mattered. Years later, as Jack looked back on his career, it wasn't the profits or the awards that stood out most. It was moments like this, moments where he saw the best in people, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. Moments where a single decision changed the trajectory of countless lives. And so, the story of Sun Valley Motors didn't just become a part of the company's history, it became a testament to the enduring power of respect, accountability, and compassion. It was a story Jack would tell often, always ending with the same words. Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, it's about being the most consistent one. And when you lead with respect, you leave a legacy worth remembering.